Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 81 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by mybookie.ag for a 200% sign up bonus. Please visit MyBookie and use the promo code Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out and sponsor the website and the podcast, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. We have 81 podcasts this year, my friends, in a crazy COVID year. Can't believe we may have made it this far. 80 is around the average that we have every single year since we started. I'd like to thank all of you listeners out there, whether you've been there the whole time or have come in recently. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for all the times that you've contributed with questions. Thank you for sharing the podcast. Thank you for writing great reviews. I'm really appreciative to all of you guys out there helping this thing keep going week after week. And hopefully you're having a great time betting on sports, learning as much as you can. I'm learning every single day. As good as our podcast picks have been doing, we are going to continue to try to bring in as many quality guests as possible. You're going to see some new ones coming up for 2021 when we hit the reset button and get into college basketball. So there's going to be a little bit of a format change soon. Obviously, college football is going to be over, and we got to shift our focus to another thing that we love in college basketball, along with some more UFC horse racing coming up and all that fun stuff that we have. Hopefully the COVID situation will keep going down and the NCAA tournament will be back on. I think that no matter what, whether they have fans or not, we're going to have that, unlike we did last year. So definitely looking forward to some fun with that. And hopefully in a few months, most of this stuff is going to blow over anyway. Our format's going to be probably the main show is going to be Thursday night / Friday morning for your Saturday and Sunday weekend college basketball games. We come up with the lines, and we're usually close, only off by a point or so on our lines and totals. And sometimes we'll record the podcast a little bit later, and the lines will start coming out as we're doing it. So college basketball is always easy to do as long as you wait later in the week to do it for the weekend. And obviously, the NFL is still going on. So we're going to have our Monday show, Monday night / Tuesday show, probably switch to Tuesday night / Wednesday for NFL. So you can get your plays and your ideas of what you want to do nice and early when the lines are still a little bit fresh. So that's the plan. As of right now, we are ending the year with our podcast based upon the bowls and the college football playoffs, January 1st through January 2nd, as well as NFL Week 17. I'm going to be going solo here. There's a lot of people traveling. Kind of wanted to just get into the bowls myself and give you my thoughts without any outside influence. We're doing great in bowl season, as you know, 6-2 so far. Hopefully we can keep that going nice and strong. Great NFL the last few weeks. Made some plays early, and the lines have, in the most part, actually moved against me, and only one or two moved for me in our premium plays. So I was a little surprised in that. When it comes to betting the NFL Week 17, it's certainly more of an art than based upon power ratings. There's a lot of motivation-based situations, but I would still take a dog fighting to get into the playoffs for their lives a lot faster than I will pick the team that's just fighting to improve their seed unless they are a massive dog in that situation. What makes this week in the NFL so interesting is that there are teams that like to play the spoiler. There are teams that like that. You heard George Kittle last week when they beat the Arizona Cardinals saying how he was a Bear fan as a kid and he was happy to do it. Well, that's just how the 49ers are. They like playing the spoiler. So we'll get into that game a little bit later with their Seattle game being played at Glendale at State Farm Stadium. And we're going to get into a few other interesting NFL spots throughout this podcast. I cannot believe that there's so many 10-5 teams in the AFC. I think there's about 5 of them, right? You have the Titans at 10-5. You have the Ravens at 10-5. You have the Browns at 10-5. You have the Colts at 10-5. And then you have the poor Miami Dolphins at 10-5. In a year of 7 playoff teams, there used to be 6, you remember, 4 division winners, 2 wild cards. In a year of 7 playoff teams, a 10-6 team is not going to make it in. Oh, no! 10-6. And the team that's most likely to not make it in my opinion, is the Miami Dolphins. After the year that they've had, the Miami Dolphins might not make the playoffs.
That's terrible.
They have to beat the Bills, and they're dogs by about 4.5 points, right? The teams they are competing against, the Baltimore Ravens, 13-point favorites against the Cincinnati Bengals. You have the Colts, because if the Colts happen to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars as 14-point favorites, we're talking about 90% win probability here, 95, something like that. Then they're in. And if the Cleveland Browns, who are now 10-point favorites against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are not playing Ben Roethlisberger, wins their game and the Dolphins lose, the Dolphins are out. Imagine being a Dolphin fan right now.
Fucking bullshit!
Man. Well, I tell you, being a Bear fan is not that easy either, because we have to play the Packers as Bear fans. Bears are 5.5-point dogs. They are at least at home here. But Aaron Rodgers and company already said they're pretty motivated for this game. Matt LaFleur said that they're treating this like their first playoff game. Okay? Even though they're looking at it this way, this team knows damn well that it's not a playoff game. And the Bears know damn well that they have to win this game. So we're going to get into this game a little bit later as well. Couple teams that have played the spoiler in the past is the Cincinnati Bengals. And they took out the Ravens a few years back when Andy Dalton threw a touchdown to Boyd to win the game. So they have actually done this before, and the Bengals are actually playing pretty good football right now. So I find that a very interesting caveat here to this large spread. Before we get into college football and the NFL, if you are a Miami Dolphin fan, maybe you make an emotional bet. Maybe you take the Ravens, the Browns, and the Colts all into a money line parlay, right? And at least if you lose to Buffalo, as long as one of those other teams lose, you're in, right? You lose your parlay bet, but you're in the playoffs. Now, obviously, all four teams could win, and you could actually win the money from the parlay, and you still make the playoffs. So, if all four teams win, I believe it's the Colts that's the lowly team sitting out here. But as far as you're concerned as a Dolphin fan, you're supposed to be the top wild card seed, which is the 5 seed, and you can literally go all the way to number 8, which misses the playoffs. So why not do this? And it might be a negative EV parlay if these favorites are either at the number or they should have a little bit less juice on them. Maybe the spread is a little bit too large, but do you care if you're a Dolphins fan? I don't know. If I was making an emotional play, personal play, I wouldn't, right? I mean, it's not going to pay a ton. It's probably going to be around minus 170, by the time you're able to make this parlay and the lines adjust to where they're supposed to be. But at the same time, maybe if you wait a little bit, these lines will move more in your favor anyway, and it will be more of like minus 160, minus 150. I do think it is a negative EV right now because I think the Ravens are a little bit too high of a spread. I think the Browns are too high of a spread, even though it's going against a backup quarterback. And I don't think the Jacksonville is wrong. I think that's correct. So Jacksonville's terrible, and they'll probably try to play spoiler, but the team is just in absolute shambles, as you saw against the Bears. But at the same time, why not wait a little bit and see if these lines adjust and make that play before the games start on Sunday? Because at least that way you're a winner either way, and you could win literally both plays.
Duh. Winning.
All right, my friends, it's time to get into a little college football bowl games starting from January 1st through January 2nd. And let's get right into it. We're going to start with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Cincinnati versus Georgia. Georgia is a 7-point favorite. The total on this game is 51. This game will be played in Georgia's backyard at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I think this bowl game has a tell in it. Okay? Kind of like a game of poker. It has a tell. Sometimes you got to read in between the lines to understand the projection of the game. Cincinnati's defense ranks number 2 in yards per play at 4.4 and number 6 in yards per point at 19.7. Very efficient defense. We all know that Georgia has a top defense except when they play the likes of Alabama and Florida, right? So why is this total over 50? Why is it? The reason is that Georgia has a ton of guys opting out this bowl game. They are missing their sack leader. They are missing their interception leader, their top 2 tacklers, and a few others. Cincinnati is a decent-sized dog here for that situation, right? And the total tells me they're going to score something. They're going to score some points. Georgia's been trending up with Daniels at quarterback on offense. They really have. But they haven't even beaten a ranked team this year. Their best win was against Auburn, right? And they basically won that game in the trenches. Georgia's strength is against the run, ranking number 1, only allowing 2.3 rushing yards per play. But the good news for Cincy is that they can pass the ball. And Georgia will be lacking on defense against the run and the pass anyway. Public Power Ratings has Georgia as 7-point favorite on a neutral with a full team. I have Cincinnati a slight dog on a neutral. Give Georgia 1.5 points for being at home-ish, right? And I think the spread should be minus 3.5, personally. I don't think it should be 7. I think that Georgia may not be that motivated here, and Cincinnati is out for blood for missing the playoffs. This somewhat feels like the UCF-Auburn game, a little from 4 years ago. Auburn was taken out late, so Georgia knew they were missing the championship, the playoffs after the Florida loss. But still, they feel like they're built for better things. Cincy is out to beat them this week. They want to show that they should have been in the playoffs. I'm going to take Cincinnati here. +7, 2-star, premium share played, and make sure that you
sprinkle that shit.
The VRBO Citrus Bowl, Northwestern versus Auburn. Auburn +3. The total on this is 43.5. This is the second lowest total in all of these bowls. I believe the Army total is the lowest. Northwestern has been just a punch you in the mouth type team, right? All year long. They pound the ball very well. And their running backs are pretty good. Isaiah Bowser there, Drake Anderson. I mean, they rarely turn the ball over. I mean, the only time they lost against Michigan State was bad turnover luck, I suppose. Peyton Ramsey has been a great addition to this team. He transferred from Indiana as a grad transfer. He's probably going to be able to play next year too. Well, he will be. And he led Northwestern to a Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. And they were leading most of that game. Auburn, on the other hand, disappointing season. They won against the SEC's weaker opponents. They should have lost that Arkansas game, if you remember. The officials blew it, completely just botched it at the end, and took the win away from Arkansas. But both of these teams, about even in net yards per play. You know, if anything worries me about Northwestern side, it's that. But Northwestern has also played a pretty hard schedule. Auburn, they also played a pretty hard schedule. But Auburn has not beaten any big teams. Northwestern beat Wisconsin, Iowa, and kept up with Ohio State. Now, Northwestern does have a few bowl holdouts. Their best wide receiver and best sacker in Iku Leota, but they're not a big passing team. So I'm not that worried about that. They have more seniors on this team than Auburn does by a lot. According to my power ratings, I have Northwestern a 5-point favorite. You know, this game, in my opinion, has live bet written all over it, though. The Cats have a draining, time-consuming type offense. No big play potential, but they get to the sticks type thing. If they're leading, they really don't let other teams back into the game. They kind of just slowly chip away at you, right? Auburn will be forced to play one-dimensional, and that is into Northwestern's strength. So if Northwestern is up, I think that they win by margin against Auburn. But on the other side of the coin, I would be a little bit more concerned if Auburn is going to be up, and I'd be concerned with Northwestern's comeback abilities. So I think the team that's up at halftime is probably going to be your best play for the second half. I'm going to lean Northwestern at -3 right now for you podcast listeners. But as far as the situation, I think it has live bet written all over it. Next game, the college football playoffs, semifinal game in Arlington, Texas. You have Notre Dame versus Alabama. Alabama, a 19.5 point favorite. The total on this game is 63.5. All right, so I have Alabama as the best team in my power ratings, right? But this spread of 19.5 is just insulting to Notre Dame. I mean, I know that Bama keeps covering, and the bettors love that. But there's got to be some limit at some point here, right? I mean, there's just too many people punishing Notre Dame for a bad game versus Clemson in the ACC championship, where Notre Dame didn't have to win to get in, while Clemson did. Notre Dame knew that, and they probably didn't want to show everything that they had that game, right? They looked like they didn't care as much. I also don't think that Alabama has had a hard enough schedule playing Georgia with a bad quarterback. And yes, they jumped Georgia in the second half, but so did Florida. And having to play a full fourth quarter versus Florida when they had their SEC championship, right? I mean, that shows a few weaknesses there. Alabama's defense showed very well in SEC since the Ole Miss game, but the truth is, lots of the same SEC teams are big dogs in their bowl games. I mean, even Mississippi State is a dog to an American Athletic Conference team, right? Missouri was a 14.5-point dog to Iowa before that was canceled, right? I mean, there's a lot of big dogs in the SEC here. Arkansas 5.5 against TCU, you know? So, Ole Miss, 8 points to Indiana. Alabama is a net 2.6 yards per play, but at least Notre Dame is a plus 1 yard per play with nice wins versus Clemson, with a very good backup quarterback, and Uiagalelei, and North Carolina. North Carolina, as you know, is a pretty good team. The most important thing to this handicap is that Alabama doesn't need to blow out Notre Dame in the fourth quarter. And they should bench Mac Brown if they're up by 3 scores in the fourth quarter, meaning the back door is wide open for the Irish. My power ratings have this 15 points on a neutral field, but I'm going to wait for the betting public to pound Bama, and I'm going to wait to try to get to 21, right? I think on game day that could possibly happen. So all you listeners out there, I'm waiting on this one, but I like already Notre Dame. Probably put about 2.5 stars. I'll just say Notre Dame plus 21-ish, 2.5 star premium play and sprinkle.
Kiss my butt!
The All-State Sugar Bowl college football playoff semifinal, New Orleans, Louisiana. You have Clemson versus Ohio State. Ohio State plus 7. The total on this is 66. This is an interesting handicap for me because Ohio State isn't the team that they were last year, yet the team knows that they should have beaten Clemson last year without some horrible officiating and a last-second pick thrown by Fields. I mean, they know that. I mean, the whole country's talked about that a lot of the year. I tend to think that Ohio State kind of wants everyone to kind of downplay them. You know, this is a large spread and kind of a punch to the face to Ohio State. I mean, let's face it, they have underachieved this year, right? But and they're getting a bad rap for playing only 6 games. But it looks like their big receiver, Chris Olave and Baron Browning, will be playing these games. Baron Browning is one of their top tacklers. The ACC is weak. I'm sorry. Clemson's schedule minus Notre Dame, which they lost to during the regular season, was pretty weak. They got Miami in the rain. They also got to avoid a tough North Carolina team. And everybody else in the ACC isn't that good. At least in the Big Ten, you have teams like Indiana who are power rated pretty much better than everybody but Notre Dame in the ACC, right? I mean, North Carolina is close to them, but Clemson didn't play them like I said before. So I'm just looking at my power ratings here. I don't have Ohio State that big of a dog to Clemson. I have Ohio State about to pick them to Clemson this year, right? And I think that Justin Fields is going to be extremely motivated. I know his thumb's a little bit banged up, but the kid's going to be able to run with his feet, and he still can throw the ball even though injured. We saw this, how he came back against Northwestern that last game, which is weeks ago, and gave him some time to heal. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I gave this out to premium subscribers at a different number. I gave it out at +8, and it's now down to +7. But I still like this play at +7, and I think that Ohio State has a very good chance to win this game outright. As far as yards per play is concerned, Clemson's at 2.1, Ohio State's at 1.9. Not too far off there. This spread is too big. I'm taking Ohio State for 2 stars and obviously a decent-sized sprinkle, maybe like a half unit or so on that money line.
The only thing I'm addicted to right now is winning.
Next game, we have January 2nd, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, Kentucky versus NC State. NC State plus 2.5. The total is 50 points. I have both of these teams equally power rated, but this is certainly an interesting matchup. NC State's been trending up in the ACC, winning their last 4 games in a row, while Kentucky has trended down, losing 4 of their last 6 games and almost lost to Vanderbilt this year. There's really no secret on how to beat the Wildcats. They have a pretty good defense, and they can't throw the ball for the life of them. Their quarterback, Terry Wilson, has about as many rushing attempts as their top running back there. Stack the box, spy the quarterback. That's how to do it. NC State's strength is the passing game. Kentucky is a little weak defending it. Kentucky is net negative 0.4 yards per play. NC State is trending up at plus 0.1. I think NC State stacks the box, spies the quarterback, and beats this team outright. Short and sweet, we're taking NC State 2.5 star premium shared play.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
The Outback Bowl, Ole Miss versus Indiana. Indiana -8. The total on this is 65.5. Indiana is pretty pissed off for not getting to play on New Year's, facing an opponent in Ole Miss who has only won 4 out of 9 games this year. One key question is, will Indiana be motivated? Well, after that, some of the stuff that Tom Allen has said before the game, Indiana coach, about being ready, and Tampa is one of their most fertile recruiting grounds for Allen and the Hoosiers, I expect a max effort out of this Indiana team. And we do know Michael Penix. He hurt himself bad in the Maryland game, I believe, tearing his ACL. But Jack Tuttle played well enough to help beat Wisconsin, and he looked like a pretty good young quarterback, And look at the defense they're facing. Ole Miss is a high-powered offense, 7 yards per play, but they're also going to be missing their top 2 pass catchers in Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah. So that's huge for a high-flying team like Ole Miss to try to make up for. Their top 2 pass catchers are out. Indiana wasn't a great rushing team, but they should be able to move the ball well against Ole Miss, who gives up 5.5 rushing yards per attempt and 7 yards per play on defense. I think Indiana's D stuffs this team, and I think Indiana's going to put up some points. My power ratings has this at 7. Give Indiana another point for motivation. I'm at 8. But I did give this out earlier when the line was at 6.5. That thing's long gone. I still like it at -8, and I like the under 65.5. And I think you wait on that though, because I think it goes up. And the reason I like the under is because Ole Miss's top 2 pass catchers are out, and Indiana's got a great defense, right? So they're going to be running the ball. Indiana -8, 1.5 star premium shared play, and we'll take the under, whatever it's going to end up, as long as it's over 66 points, 1.5 star premium shared play. Next game, we have the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, Oregon versus Iowa State. Iowa State is laying 3.5 points. The total on this is 57.5. This bowl is pretty hard to gauge with Oregon's limited games this year. Sure, they did a great job beating USC, but that game was based on USC just being sloppy with the ball, turning it over multiple times. Oregon lost to Oregon State and Cal this year somehow. Right? Oregon's also a nice net 1.2 yards per play, so I'm going to give them that for a positive thing. But they're just not mature yet. There's a lot of young kids on this Oregon team, and they'll be better next year. Iowa State, on the other hand, led by a lot of seniors, they should have beaten Oklahoma, and they might have if they had one more quarter. Brock Purdy played terrible the first half in the Big 12 championship game. Just terrible, Charles Barkley. From a straight power ratings perspective, I only have Iowa State about 1.5 points better than the Ducks. All right. Iowa State's got a nice positive 1.4 yards per play in a tougher conference than the Pac-12, in my opinion. I mean, we just saw Oklahoma State blow the doors off Miami. And that was also, they were doing that when De'Aaron King was playing, so you can't blame that. And we saw Texas just blow the doors off of Colorado. So there you go. Matt Campbell, he lost the conference championship, but I see them rallying and getting up for the Fiesta Bowl. Oregon won their Pac-12 in a weird COVID year, and that might be just enough for them. I'm going to wait a little bit and see if I can get a 3. Okay, it's went down a little bit, so I'm just going to wait on it. The fact that my power rating is only 1.5 gives me pause. I'm not going to give out a play right now. If it's at 3 or better, I probably will. So I'm going to lean Iowa State right now at the -3. Finally, our last bowl of the season, the Capital One Orange Bowl, North Carolina versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M -7.5. The total is 65.5 as well on this game. So if you've listened to me all year long, you know that I think that Texas A&M is a bit overrated. But it's not just according to the national TV analysts. I think they're also overrated in their own eyes. You know, they complained a lot about Notre Dame getting in ahead of them, about Ohio State getting in ahead of them, when this team struggled to teams like Vanderbilt and Arkansas, right? They only beat LSU by, 13 points or so. LSU, not a good team this year at all. So they do have a nice win, and that's Florida, and I'll give them that. And that was a nail-biter. They came back, just a wonderful game to watch, a shootout, roughly, to say the least. But I still think it's kind of been dimmed down, the fact that they got their butts beat so bad against Alabama. It was like 52 points Alabama scored against them, just a lot. On the flip side, North Carolina, they've taken their lumps. I mean, they lost to Florida State. There's no excuse for that. They got jumped by Florida State and was down by like 4 touchdowns at half. They're down by 31-0, I believe, and they came back, scored 28 points, and almost won it. But still, that's a bad loss. Virginia was a pretty bad loss too, but they finished out the season really well, blowing away Miami. Right. The problem with North Carolina is that their top wide receiver, Diami Brown, their top running back, Michael Carter, and top sacker and tackler, Chaz Surratt, I guess he does both really well, linebacker, is opting out for the NFL. So that's not good news. But the good news is that they have other running backs that can get the job down, and they do have some depth at defense, right? And they have a lot of pass catchers on that team. So not too worried for Sam Howell. The huge question for me is not answered quite yet, but I think Texas A&M will probably have some late opt-outs as well. I mean, Isaiah Spiller is their leading running back, and he's a for sure NFL draft pick as long as he's healthy. Him staying is risking a pretty serious injury for it's a big bowl game, the Orange Bowl, so I get it, and I applaud the kid if he does stay. But there's just chances that you're going to see some of these A&M guys sit out as well. In saying that, the spread's not telling you that, right? Kellen Mond, he's had a great year, but he's better off playing this game. So I think he plays because he needs to improve his draft stock. My power rankings have the Aggies -3. And give them another 3 points for the opt-outs, you get -6. Right? So that's where I think the spread should be. But I got to tell you, I love what Sam Howell's done this year. And even with backups, he's capable of putting up big offensive performance and big numbers, similar to what Bama did to A&M earlier. North Carolina is kind of like the poor man's Alabama. The defense, suspect at times, but the offense is fantastic, right? So I like North Carolina, and they could win this one outright. So I'm going to take them for your free play, plus 7.5, 3-star premium play, and make sure you sprinkle.
And so then I got a call from him saying, we don't have to worry about money no more. And I said, that's good. One less thing.
All right, my friends, now it's time to get into a little NFL action, Week 17. All right, my friends, Week 17 is such an interesting week of NFL football. You can kind of rip up and throw away your power ratings in many cases because lots of teams will be extra motivated, lots of teams will be less motivated, and some teams will just come out of nowhere and do something you don't expect. A lot of people hate Week 17. I happen to like Week 17. I've been successful in the past, line moves or not, so we're going to go into some of these games. First, I want to touch on some games that I'm not touching, and that's any NFC East game. I have literally no clue what these teams are going to give us. Dallas has looked crazy good lately for some reason, and you wonder if they're just playing on pure adrenaline. They have a shot of making it if they win and Washington loses. Same with the Giants. Then you have the Eagles that are pissed that they missed the playoffs. They might want to take Washington out and play spoiler. Or maybe they're just completely defeated, but they do have a home game versus Washington. Washington has been in quarterback woe the last few weeks. As you've seen, Dwayne Haskins has been literally fired by the team. And just so much craziness can happen in the NFC East. So I wanted to let you know those two games I am personally avoiding. The Jets versus the Patriots. I think that the Jets are live here. The Patriots are very deflated. On the other hand, Belichick might have these kids motivated to finish the season, but I lean the Jets because when you have a coach like Belichick, if you're successful, you buy in. If you're not, then he's a very hard-nosed coach that a player might tend to rebel against. Okay? That is why I lean the Jets here +3. Plus, the Jets know that they almost had the Patriots at home when they won. Now, the Jets are very banged up. They have some guys that are now injured. They've won a few games here. They really have nothing to lose since the Bengals keep winning. So they're going to put up an effort here. Lean the Jets. You have the Vikings versus the Lions. The Lions are a 6.5-point dog. I think both teams are going to be motivated here to try to finish out the year, but the Vikings actually do have the better coach, and that's why you see them road favorites of -6.5. The Lions have been so bad the last couple of weeks. I'm not going to touch that game. Atlanta versus Tampa. Tampa, a 6.5-point favorite here. I guarantee you that Tampa does want to play the NFC East as a wild card, so keep that in mind if you're thinking about betting the Falcons, who have been covering their asses off the last few games. My number on this game is pretty close to that. If I'm looking at my power ratings, Tampa is 4 points better than the average team. Atlanta is -1.25 points better than the average team, which would make a 5.25 spread on a neutral. This would make it 7.25 in Tampa, but pretty close to 6.5 juiced. So in this situation, I'm avoiding it, but I will lean Tampa. Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati is going to want to play the spoiler here. They've been playing great the last few weeks, as you've seen, without Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's probably like, hey, where's this defense been since I've been playing the first half of this year? But Cincinnati has decided to show up a little bit. They're running the ball very well. They're finding some open receivers, and I find that very interesting how they've actually stepped up lately. Jacksonville versus the Colts. Colts are minus 14, but I lean them. They're probably going to put one on Jacksonville. Bears versus Packers, we'll discuss. Titans versus the Texans. There's a premium play on that, so I'm avoiding that one. New Orleans Saints versus the Carolina Panthers. Saints have a shot at home field, but if they win, they're not guaranteed it. And they really need the Packers to lose to get in, because even if Seattle wins and Green Bay loses, they clinch the first round. If Seattle wins and Green Bay wins, then Green Bay obviously has it. If Seattle loses and Green Bay wins, they have the number 2 seeds. So they're motivated here to stay at number 2, because if Seattle wins, Green Bay wins, they lose, they're the number 3 seed, then they technically have to go to Seattle for the 2 versus 3 playoffs. So before they would play, obviously, the NFC Championship against most likely the Green Bay Packers, unless the Packers get bounced. Oh, by the way, a shout out to Who Dat Nation and Big Easy Bets podcast. Next game, we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the Niners. We'll cover that. The Raiders versus the Broncos. This is involved in a teaser. Cardinals versus the Rams. So much quarterback questions here. It looks like Goff's not going to play, yet somehow the Rams are still favored. There's a chance Kyler Murray might not play. Not enough information for me to go there. As a Bears fan, I obviously want the Rams to win, because if the Bears lose, they are still in. Real interesting game there. And then you have the nighttime game to see who wins the NFC East between the Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's get into some of our plays. Green Bay versus Chicago. Chicago is a plus 5.5 point dog. The total on this game is 52. This game is all about, would you rather bet a fighter who is fighting for their life over a fighter that's fighting for style points or just ranking? Well, this is kind of it. The Green Bay Packers have the easiest road right now to get to the number 1 seed in the NFC. And if they win, they're in. That's great. If they lose, they still could be in if San Francisco beats Seattle. In my opinion, it's much more important to keep your guys healthy than ensure a bye week. I mean, Devontae Adams has been banged up already for periods this year. Aaron Rodgers is facing a great pressure defense in the Bears. Imagine one of those 2 players spraining an MCL, hamstring, sprained ankle. Happens all the time, out multiple weeks. Congrats on your bye week, guys. It's ridiculous to me, because the Packers are most likely going to get the number 2 seed anyway and still host the Bears at home, right? If the Bears get in. Now, Matt LaFleur said he's going to treat this like a playoff game, and that's great. But at the same time, if San Francisco is beating Seattle pretty good, I could see Aaron Rodgers definitely taking a break and them benching Aaron Rodgers the second half, because they're going to get the top seed anyway, because they beat the Saints head-to-head this year, right? So the Bears been playing great ball lately, very great ball. And you have to give them an uplift in the power ratings, especially for the what have you done for me lately power ratings. They've been scoring over 30 points their last 4 games. You got to give them credit for that, because their offense was so terrible this year. They finally figured out how to use Mitch. I also think there's a chance that the Bears get Jalen Johnson and or Buster Skrine back in the secondary. The Packers can be run on, as you've seen this year. They can be. And their offensive line is a little bit banged up as well coming into this game. So this is a great live betting situation. If San Francisco is obviously winning at half, there's a chance that Rodgers gets benched in the second half. If the Bears have a big lead, then they're just going to throw it away, right? Hopefully the San Fran wins. Or if the Packers have a big lead, they might be like, time to rest their guys. It's important to stay healthy. In my opinion, I think what Pittsburgh's doing with Big Ben is pretty smart because Big Ben is very banged up. And Buffalo is favored against Miami. So, they might still be able to win with Mason Rudolph, right? So, the Bears at 5.5 points is too far. The back door is wide open. The Bears are fighting for their lives. I'm taking the Bears 2.5 star premium play and sprinkle.
Where's my money, bitch?
Next game, we have Miami versus Buffalo. Buffalo minus 4.5 points. The total is about 46, 47. Here's another of the same situation where the Bills can win just to get in, but it's even more favorable due to the fact that their competition is benching their quarterback, right? And it's a 10-point dog in their competition, right? I mean, Pittsburgh, literally a 10-point dog. The Bills can lose and easily get in according to what they should be looking. Bills had their FU game on Monday night, right, against the Patriots, and they gave a full effort, that game. Short week they're coming in. I don't know what their kind of effort they should be putting up this week, risking injury. You have to play the game even if you get the number 2 seed anyway. Sure, you play it at home, but you're not getting fans. How important is that? Are you thinking about? It's not like the situation where the Packers get the actual bye. It's even worse. Now, this game might be a great live betting situation if Cleveland is up at halftime, no matter if they're up or not, because they might just decide to bench their guys anyway, right? I mean, having Stephon Diggs play in the fourth, having Allen play in the fourth, that's interesting. My power number on this is Buffalo -6 with home field advantage. But in this situation, I have to look at the dog here playing for their 10-win season, the Miami Dolphins. Believe it or not, I think that Fitzpatrick, for some reason in his head, becomes terrible when he's announced as the starting quarterback. This is like a very intangible thing. It's the part of sports betting that is not analytical. It's the art, right? And the best way to play this is to start Tua and pull him right away for Fitzmagic so he can work his Fitzmagic. Pull Tua if he doesn't score a touchdown, literally. Get Fitzmagic in early, but still start Tua. And if the Browns are up at halftime, I think the back door is going to be open all day for this, past the 3 especially. I actually am shocked that Buffalo is going to put up a mass effort when they can't get the bye anyways. It's not like Buffalo should have a huge problem driving a few hours to Pittsburgh when they're not going to have any fans at the game anyway, right? So lots of chances are Buffalo's going to play this game. I'm playing the Dolphins here, and it's probably even better live betting situation later or in the second half if you can. Miami Dolphins plus 4.5 points, 1.5 star premium play.
Soon as he buy that wine, I just creep up from behind.
The last game is by listener request, Mr. Patrick Backhouse, Seattle versus San Fran. San Fran +5. The total on this is 46. This game will be played in San Francisco's new home in Glendale, Arizona, and the odds makers are not really treating it like a home game. Well, San Francisco didn't seem to have much of a problem there last week, right? Beating the Cardinals outright at their real home. I think Kyle Shanahan's got this team motivated. It's been a tough year. Super Bowl hangover for the Niners, so many injuries, but Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator, has them fired up, motivated, and stopping some teams. The 49ers have a lot of pride in them, and it's because they believe they had a bad rap with all the injuries, and they believe they're their best team, so they love playing the spoiler here. Now, San Fran, they have C.J. Beathard at starting quarterback, and I think that's an upgrade after what we saw last week because Nick Mullins was just absolutely terrible down the stretch. The bad news is that they're going to be without Brandon Ayuk, along with Deebo Samuel, who has missed the last few games. The good news is George Kittle's back. He played well and should be able to start the game And you're going to see some dinking and dunking with him and Jordan Reed, some 2 tight end sets. I think that's going to drain the clock a little bit. And on the other hand, Seattle, we used to rip on their defense. During their last 5 games, they've shut down their opponents to 17 or less points every single game. During their last 7 games, they held opponents to less than 24 points. Seattle's now an unders team, and I think the safest play here is the under. I also think that if Green Bay happens to be beating Chicago by halftime, you might see Russell Wilson, Carson, Lockett, and DK Metcalf on the bench during the second half. Bet San Francisco the second half if Green Bay is winning. San Fran loves the spoiler spot, and Robert Saleh's defense is playing great. I think both teams is not going to score a ton here. I like the under 46 2-star premium shared play. And to round it up, my friends, it is time for our Refuse to Lose teaser. That is 10-6 for the season. 6-point teaser. We're going to tease Denver up to plus 8.5 hosting the Raiders and Tampa Bay down to minus 0.5. Do you think Tampa Bay wants to play the NFC East for their wild card game? Yes. Do you think Denver is in a better spot than the Raiders after they blew that home game versus Miami? Yes. This is the last Refuse to Lose teaser of the regular season. Book it. 2-star premium shared play.
Show me the money!
And now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.eu for a 80% sign up bonus. Please visit uwager and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. All right, as of Wednesday afternoon, Sharp College for December 31st through January 2nd. Sharp money on Tulsa, minus 2.5 versus Mississippi State. 36% of the tickets on Tulsa, 92% of the money. Sharp money on Army, plus 9 to plus 7 at West Virginia. 55% of the tickets on Army, 99% of the money. Sharp money on Georgia, minus 7 versus Cincinnati. 48% of the tickets on Georgia, 84% of the money. Sharp money on Ohio State, plus 8.5 to plus 7 versus Clemson. 34% of the tickets on Ohio State, 76% of the money. Sharp money on Indiana, minus 6.5 to minus 8.5 versus Ole Miss. 61% of the tickets on Indiana, 72% of the money. Sharp money on Iowa State, minus 4 versus Oregon, 72% of the tickets and 93% of the money. Some dual action. Sharp totals, Georgia versus Cincinnati, over 50.5, 76% of the bets on the over and 94% of the money. Sharp money on Auburn versus Northwestern, under 43.5, 58% of the tickets on the under, 97% of the money. Sharp money on Texas A&M versus UNC, under 68.5 to 65.5, 57% of the tickets on the under and 84% of the money. Sharp NFL as of Wednesday afternoon, week 17. Sharp money on the Cowboys, minus 2 to minus 2.5 at the Giants. 79% of the tickets on the Cowboys and 94% of the money. Sharp money on the Bears, plus 5.5 hosting the Packers. 30% of the tickets on the Bears. 77% of the money. Sharp money on the Seahawks, minus 5.5 at the 49ers. 84% of the tickets on the Seahawks, 95% of the money. Sharp money on the Cardinals, pick them to minus 2 at the Rams. 63% of the tickets on the Cardinals, 83% of the money. Sharp money on Washington, pick to minus 1.5 at the Eagles. 64% of the tickets on Washington, 95% of the money. Sharp totals, Packers versus Bears, over 49 to 51.5. 68% of the tickets on the over, 80% of the money. Sharp money on the Raiders versus Broncos, over 50.5. 38% of the tickets on the over and 95% of the money. That's all we have right now, my friends. If you have any basketball games or any other NFL games you want us to break down, please tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Thank you so much for the best we can do for 2020. I'm not going to call it a great year or anything, but you guys hung with us, and we are very appreciative. Have a great rest of your week, and go get some winners.